Hello everyone, welcome back to Self-Teller Audiobook. Before we begin this journey together, take a moment to settle in. This audiobook is not meant to be rushed. It is meant to be felt. Everything you are about to hear is designed to help you understand yourself more deeply, to recognize the silent patterns shaping your life, and to step into a stronger form of self-leadership, especially in the moments when no one is watching, applauding, or correcting you. This is about the quiet choices, the unseen discipline, the emotional strength built in private. As you listen, allow yourself to be honest. No judgment, no pressure, just awareness. That is where true change begins. Chapter 1: The weight you carry is not always visible. In fact, most of it has never been seen by anyone else. You wake up, move through your responsibilities, speak when spoken to, smile when expected, and handle what life places in front of you. From the outside, you may appear fine, functional, capable, even strong. But beneath that surface lives a collection of unspoken expectations, unresolved disappointments, and emotional responsibilities you never consciously agreed to carry. This is the hidden weight, and you have been carrying it for a very long time. Think about how often you replay conversations in your head long after they end. The things you wish you had said, the apologies you never received, the approval you hoped would finally come if you just tried a little harder. These mental loops consume energy, yet they rarely produce resolution. Over time, they become emotional background noise, so familiar that you forget how heavy it feels. This is not weakness. This is conditioning. Many of these burdens were formed early in life. You may have learned that love had to be earned, that approval required performance, or that your needs were less important than keeping the peace. Perhaps you became the reliable one, the strong one, the understanding one. At first, this identity felt empowering. But slowly, silently, it turned into pressure. You began measuring your worth by how well you carried others, how much you endured without complaint, how little space you took up. Emotional attachment often grows from these early lessons. Attachment to being needed, attachment to being liked, attachment to outcomes you cannot fully control. Without realizing it, you start gripping life tightly. People, roles, expectations, afraid that loosening your hold will cost you love, safety, or belonging. And so you carry more than your share. You absorb moods that are not yours. You take responsibility for reactions you did not cause. You stay mentally tethered to situations long after they have ended. This constant emotional holding drains your energy in subtle ways. It shows up as chronic tiredness that sleep does not fix, as irritability that surprises you, as a quiet sense of resentment mixed with guilt for feeling resentful at all. You may even tell yourself that this is just how life is, that everyone feels this way, but deep down, there is a part of you that knows something is off. You were not meant to live emotionally clenched. Self-leadership begins here, not with productivity or discipline, but with awareness. When no one is watching, how do you speak to yourself? What expectations do you silently carry? What emotional debts are you still paying? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are powerful. Because until you see the weight clearly, you will continue to believe that exhaustion is your personality, that anxiety is just motivation, and that emotional tension is the price of caring. Detachment, which we will explore deeply in this audiobook, is not about abandoning responsibility or becoming cold. It is about learning to set down what was never yours to carry. It is about recognizing that your peace does not have to be negotiated, earned, or postponed. Right now, simply notice the weight. Name it without judgment. Awareness is the first act of self-leadership, and it is always done in silence when no one is watching. Chapter 2: To lead yourself well, You must first understand what is quietly influencing your emotions and decisions. Emotional attachment is one of the most powerful forces shaping human behavior, yet most people never consciously examine it. Attachment is not just about relationships. It is about identity. It is about what you believe you need in order to feel safe, worthy, or complete. Emotional attachment forms when your sense of inner stability becomes dependent on something outside of you. It might be a person whose approval makes you feel valuable. It might be a specific outcome that you believe will finally bring peace. It might be an image of yourself, successful, admired, needed, that you feel you must protect at all costs. Over time, these attachments stop being preferences and start becoming emotional requirements. Consider a simple example. You send a message to someone important to you and they do not respond. Logically, nothing harmful has happened. But emotionally, something shifts. Your mind fills the silence with meaning. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset? Am I being ignored? The discomfort you feel is not caused by the silence itself. It is caused by attachment. The need for reassurance, the need for control over how you are perceived. Attachments often form unconsciously in moments of vulnerability. When you experience praise during a difficult time, you may attach to validation. When consistency disappears suddenly, you may attach to certainty. When love feels conditional, you may attach to performance. These patterns are understandable. They are adaptive responses. But what once helped you cope can later limit your freedom. Attachment also explains why certain situations trigger strong emotional reactions that seem disproportionate. You may find yourself overly upset by small criticisms, deeply anxious about outcomes you cannot control, or unusually affected by other people's moods. These reactions are signals. They point to something you are gripping tightly because you believe your well-being depends on it. One of the most important truths to understand is this: attachment is not the same as love, ambition, or care. You can care deeply without clinging. You can strive without suffering. Attachment adds fear to desire. It says, I need this to be okay. And when the mind believes something is needed, it enters survival mode. Judgment narrows. Emotional regulation weakens. Peace becomes conditional. Pay attention to how attachment shapes your internal dialogue. Notice phrases like, I can't be okay unless this works out. If they leave, I will fall apart. I need them to understand me. I can't fail at this. These thoughts feel convincing, but they are rooted in fear, not truth. They outsource your emotional stability to forces you cannot fully control. And when you live this way, you are constantly reacting instead of leading yourself. Self-leadership requires reclaiming your emotional center. It means recognizing that while relationships, goals, and achievements add meaning to life, they are not the source of your worth. Attachment blurs this distinction. It convinces you that losing something external means losing something internal. But that is an illusion learned over time, not a permanent reality. As you move through your days, begin noticing where your emotions spike sharply. Where do you feel anxious, defensive, or desperate for reassurance? These moments are not failures. They are teachers. They show you where attachment lives. And once you see it clearly, you can begin loosening its grip, not through force, but through understanding. Chapter 3. If emotional detachment is so freeing, why does it feel so frightening? Why does the idea of letting go stir discomfort, resistance, and even grief before anything has actually been lost? The answer is simple, yet deeply human. Detachment threatens the familiar, and the mind is wired to protect what feels familiar, even when it hurts. For most of your life, attachment has acted like emotional glue. It has given you a sense of identity, purpose, and connection. Even when attachment causes pain, it also provides structure. It tells you who you are in relation to others. When you imagine loosening that grip, the mind interprets it as danger. It whispers that you will become lonely, disconnected, invisible, or misunderstood. These fears do not arise because detachment is harmful. They arise because the ego equates attachment with survival. Think about a relationship that no longer serves you, but still feels hard to release. The fear is rarely about the person themselves. It is about what their absence might say about you. Am I unlovable? Will I be alone? Did I fail? Detachment feels like standing without emotional armor, exposed to uncertainty. And the mind prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar freedom. Another reason detachment feels scary is because it is often confused with loss. But detachment is not about losing people or experiences. It is about releasing emotional dependency. It is about allowing things to exist without chaining your inner stability to them. Yet the mind struggles with this distinction. It believes that caring less means becoming empty, that not gripping tightly means not caring at all. There is also a fear of emptiness. When attachment dissolves, there is a quiet space left behind. At first, this space can feel unsettling. You may notice emotions you previously avoided. You may feel less busy internally, less driven by urgency, and without constant emotional noise, the mind asks, "Who am I now?" This question can feel threatening if your identity has been built around reaction, struggle, or pleasing others. But this emptiness is not a void, it is a clearing. It is the space where self-leadership begins. When you are no longer pulled in 10 emotional directions, you gain access to clarity. Calm does not mean nothing is happening. It means nothing is controlling you. Fear is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are stepping beyond old emotional boundaries. Emotional maturity is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to move gently through it without letting it dictate your choices. The next time detachment feels uncomfortable, pause and notice what story your mind is telling you. Are you afraid of being alone, of being misunderstood, of losing control? These fears are not warnings. They are thresholds. On the other side of them is a deeper sense of inner stability, one that does not depend on constant reassurance or emotional tension. Detachment does not take anything away that is truly meant for you. It simply removes what was draining your peace in exchange for false security. And while the transition may feel uncertain, what you gain is emotional adulthood, the ability to stand grounded within yourself, regardless of what others do or do not give you. Chapter 4. One of the greatest misunderstandings about emotional detachment is the belief that it turns you into someone cold, distant, or uncaring. This myth keeps many people trapped in unnecessary suffering because they believe pain is proof of love. But caring deeply does not require hurting deeply. In fact, detachment allows love to become cleaner, calmer, and more genuine. Indifference is avoidance. Detachment is presence without entanglement. When you are indifferent, you shut down emotionally to protect yourself. When you are detached, you remain open, but you are no longer controlled. You can listen without absorbing. You can support without rescuing. You can love without losing yourself. Consider how often other people's emotions dictate your internal state. Someone is upset, and suddenly your mood shifts. Someone is disappointed, and you feel responsible. Someone withdraws, and you begin questioning your worth. This is not empathy, it is emotional over-identification. Detachment teaches you to recognize where others end and where you begin. Being emotionally detached does not mean you stop showing kindness or compassion. It means you stop making your inner peace dependent on how others behave. You can care about someone's feelings without carrying them. You can understand their pain without internalizing it. This distinction is subtle but powerful. When you practice detachment, You begin responding instead of reacting. Reaction is immediate and emotional. Response is intentional and grounded. Detachment creates the pause between stimulus and action. In that pause lives your power. Imagine a moment of conflict. Someone speaks harshly to you. Without detachment, the comment hooks into your emotions. You feel attacked. You defend yourself. The situation escalates. With detachment, you still hear the words, but they do not define you. You recognize that their reaction may reflect their inner state more than your worth. You choose how to engage, or whether to engage at all. Detachment also protects love. When you cling, love becomes transactional. You give in order to receive. You stay in order to be chosen. You tolerate in order to avoid loss. Detachment removes these hidden contracts. It allows love to exist without fear. And when fear leaves, authenticity enters. This does not mean you tolerate disrespect or neglect. Detachment is not passivity. It is clarity. It allows you to set boundaries without anger and walk away without hatred. You no longer need dramatic exits or emotional ultimatums. Your actions become quiet, firm, and self-respecting. Ask yourself this: can I care without controlling? Can I love without clinging? Can I stay present without sacrificing myself? These are not abstract ideas. They are daily practices of self-leadership. Each time you choose calm over chaos, clarity over drama, and self-respect over emotional dependency, you are practicing detachment. You are not becoming less human. You are becoming more whole. Chapter 5, one of the most powerful skills you can develop in leading yourself, especially when no one is watching, is the ability to observe without reacting. This skill alone can change the entire trajectory of your emotional life. Most people do not suffer because of what happens to them. They suffer because of how quickly and unconsciously they react to what happens. An emotion arises, and before you know it, you are inside it. A comment triggers irritation. A delay creates anxiety. A tone of voice sparks defensiveness. These reactions feel automatic, as if they are happening to you rather than through you. But they are not uncontrollable forces. They are learned responses. And anything learned can be unlearned with awareness. Emotional observation begins with a pause. Not a forced pause, not suppression, but a gentle moment of noticing. Instead of asking, "How do I fix this feeling?" you ask, "What is actually happening inside me right now?" This shift alone creates space between you and the emotion. You stop being the emotion and start witnessing it. Picture your emotions like waves in the ocean. When you are attached, you are pulled under by every wave. When you observe, you stand on the shore. The waves still come. You still feel them. But they no longer knock you down. You see how they rise, peak, and fall on their own. Most emotions lose intensity when they are fully observed without resistance. This practice requires patience. The mind is used to reacting quickly because it believes speed equals protection. But reacting rarely protects your peace. It usually sacrifices it. Observation slows the process just enough for wisdom to enter. Here is how emotional observation looks in practice. You notice a surge of anger, but you do not act on it immediately. You feel anxiety, but instead of spiraling, you focus on your breath. You experience disappointment, but you allow it to exist without turning it into a story about your worth. Observation does not mean disengagement from life. It means engagement with clarity. You are still present, still aware, but no longer overwhelmed. This is emotional strength, not hardness, but steadiness. When you practice this consistently, something remarkable happens. Emotions begin to inform you instead of control you. You start recognizing patterns. You notice which situations trigger insecurity, which voices in your head sound familiar, which reactions are rooted in old wounds rather than current reality. This awareness gives you choice, and choice is the foundation of self-leadership. Breath, is one of the simplest tools for observation. When emotions rise, bring your attention to your breathing, not to change it, just to notice it. This anchors you in the present moment. It reminds your nervous system that you are safe. From this grounded place, emotions feel less urgent and more manageable. You may discover that some emotions want to be felt, not fixed. Sadness may ask for acknowledgement. Frustration may point to a boundary being crossed. Fear may signal uncertainty, not danger. Observation allows you to hear these messages without being consumed by them. Leading yourself means becoming someone who can sit with discomfort without escaping it and experience emotion without being ruled by it. This is especially important in private moments, when no one is there to witness your restraint, your patience, your inner discipline. These quiet victories shape your character more than any public success. With practice, you will notice that you respond more thoughtfully. You speak more calmly. You recover faster. Life does not stop presenting challenges, but you stop meeting them with unnecessary suffering. Chapter 6, one of the most draining attachments you can carry is the need for approval. It often hides behind good intentions, being kind, being helpful, being agreeable. But beneath it lives a quiet fear, the fear of being disliked, rejected, or seen as not enough. When your sense of worth depends on how others perceive you, you give away your emotional authority. You begin living from the outside and instead of the inside out. The need for approval usually forms early. Perhaps you learned that praise followed achievement, that love came when you were easy to deal with, or that disagreement led to distance. Over time, you adapted. You learned to read rooms, adjust your behavior, soften your opinions, and carry emotional responsibility for how others felt. These skills helped you survive socially, but as an adult, they often keep you small. Approval seeking is exhausting because it requires constant monitoring. You replay interactions. You analyze tone and timing. You wonder if you said too much or not enough. This mental vigilance creates anxiety, not connection. And the irony is that the more you chase approval, the less authentic you become. People may like the version of you that performs, but they never truly meet you. Detachment from approval does not mean becoming rude or inconsiderate. It means no longer needing external validation to confirm your value. It means allowing others to have their opinions without letting those opinions define you. This is a quiet, internal shift, but it changes everything. Ask yourself how often your decisions are shaped by the desire to avoid discomfort rather than to honor your values. How many times have you said yes when you wanted to say no? How many times have you stayed silent to keep the peace? Each of these moments may seem small, but over time they create resentment toward others and toward yourself. Releasing the need for approval begins with self-trust. You start asking different questions. Instead of, do they like this? You ask, is this aligned with who I want to be? Instead of, will this upset them? You ask, is this honest and respectful? These questions shift your focus from external reaction to internal integrity. There is discomfort in this transition. When you stop seeking approval, some people may react. They may be confused by your boundaries or unsettled by your calm confidence. This does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means the dynamic has changed. You are no longer playing a familiar role. Here are practical ways to loosen approval attachment. Notice when you explain yourself excessively. Often, it is a sign of seeking permission. Practice small acts of honesty, even when they feel uncomfortable. Allow others to feel disappointed without rushing to fix it. Remind yourself that disagreement is not rejection. Self-worth is not something others give you. It is something you practice. Every time you act in alignment with your values, especially when no one is applauding, you strengthen your inner foundation. You become less reactive, less anxious, and more grounded. When approval no longer controls you, relationships become more genuine. You give because you want to, not because you fear losing connection. You listen without needing to impress. You speak without needing to perform. This is emotional freedom, and it begins in the quiet decision to trust yourself. Chapter 7. One of the most subtle sources of stress in life is attachment to outcomes. You set a goal, enter a relationship, start a project, or make a decision, and somewhere along the way, your peace becomes dependent on how things turn out. When the desired result feels essential to your happiness, anxiety quietly takes over. You begin living in the future instead of the present, bracing for disappointment or chasing reassurance. Attachment to outcomes is often mistaken for motivation. You tell yourself that pressure is necessary, that worry keeps you focused, that control ensures success. But pressure rarely produces clarity. It produces tension. And tension clouds judgment. When you are attached to a specific result, you stop seeing reality clearly. You see only what supports or threatens your expectation. Letting go of outcomes does not mean you stop caring about results. It means you stop letting results define your worth or well-being. You shift your focus from what you cannot fully control to what you can: your effort, your integrity, your presence. Think of a time when you worked hard for something and still did not get the outcome you hoped for. The disappointment may have felt personal, as if your effort was invalidated. But effort is never wasted. It builds skill, resilience, and self-trust, qualities that last far beyond any single result. Outcome attachment blinds you to this deeper growth. When you release the need to control outcomes, you become more effective. You adapt more easily. You listen better. You take feedback without defensiveness. You recover faster from setbacks. This is because your nervous system is no longer in survival mode. You are not fighting reality. You are working with it. Here are practical ways to loosen outcome attachment. Set intentions, not ultimatums. Aim for growth, learning, or contribution rather than a specific result. Measure success by effort and alignment, not external reward. Remind yourself that outcomes are influenced by many variables beyond your control. Practice presence by focusing on the task in front of you, not the future payoff. When you detach from outcomes, you begin to enjoy the process. Work becomes more creative. Relationships feel lighter. Decisions feel cleaner. You are no longer negotiating with the future for permission to feel okay in the present. This mindset is especially important when no one is watching. External rewards often disappear in private moments. There is no applause for effort behind the scenes. Self-leadership means showing up fully even when the result is uncertain and recognition is absent. Life responds differently when you are not gripping tightly. Opportunities align more naturally. People sense your groundedness. You move with confidence because your peace is not at stake with every step. You trust yourself to handle whatever comes next. Letting go of outcomes is not resignation. It is empowerment. It says, I will give my best, and I will be okay regardless of the result. From this place, you act with courage instead of fear, and that changes everything. Chapter 8. Emotional boundaries are one of the clearest expressions of self-leadership. They define where you end and where others begin. Without them, you absorb what is not yours, other people's moods, problems, expectations, and unspoken demands. Over time, this absorption leads to exhaustion, resentment, and a quiet loss of self. Many people struggle with boundaries because they associate them with rejection or selfishness. They fear that saying no will hurt others, that protecting their energy will make them seem uncaring. But boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They allow what is healthy to enter and what is harmful to stay out. When you lack emotional boundaries, You may feel responsible for fixing how others feel. If someone is upset, you rush to soothe. If someone is disappointed, you blame yourself. This pattern often comes from empathy, but empathy without boundaries becomes self-neglect. Healthy boundaries begin with self-awareness. You start noticing when something feels draining, overwhelming, or misaligned. That discomfort is information. It is your inner guidance system asking you to pause and reassess. Ignoring it does not make you kind. It makes you depleted. Setting boundaries does not require confrontation or explanation. It often begins internally. You decide what you are willing to engage with emotionally and what you are not. You recognize that you can care without carrying. You can listen without solving. You can be present without sacrificing your peace. Here are practical ways to build emotional boundaries. Pause before responding, especially when emotions are high. Give yourself permission to say no without justifying it. Notice when guilt appears after prioritizing yourself and let it pass. Limit exposure to people or situations that consistently drain you. Boundaries also protect your compassion. When you are not overwhelmed, you can show up more fully. You become less reactive and more supportive. You stop offering help out of obligation and start offering it from choice. There will be moments when others resist your boundaries. This is normal. Boundaries change dynamics. They reveal who is accustomed to your over-giving and who respects your self-respect. You do not need to argue or defend yourself. Your consistency will speak for you. Self-leadership means honoring your energy as a finite resource. You do not have to attend every emotional emergency. You do not have to be available at all times. Protecting your inner space allows you to act with clarity and intention. When no one is watching, boundaries are tested most. It is easy to overextend in private, to ignore your needs, to push past your limits because no one will notice. But you will notice. And how you treat yourself in those moments shapes your relationship with yourself. Boundaries are not barriers to connection. They are pathways to healthier, more balanced relationships, including the one you have with yourself. Chapter 9: Detachment becomes far more natural when past emotional wounds are acknowledged rather than avoided. Many of your strongest reactions in the present are echoes from the past, unhealed experiences asking for recognition. When these wounds remain unconscious, they quietly influence how you attach, how you react, and what you fear losing. Emotional wounds are not always dramatic. Sometimes they are formed through repeated small moments, being dismissed, misunderstood, or made to feel invisible. Other times they come from sudden loss, betrayal, or unmet needs. The mind remembers not just what happened, but how it felt. And when a current situation resembles that feeling, the old wound reactivates. You may notice this when a minor disagreement feels deeply threatening, or when silence triggers anxiety disproportionate to the situation. These reactions are not flaws. They are signals. They tell you that something older is being touched. Healing does not mean reliving the pain or assigning blame. It means allowing yourself to see the wound clearly and respond to it with compassion instead of avoidance. Many people try to detach by suppressing emotion, but suppression only strengthens what remains unhealed. True detachment grows from integration. Begin by observing your emotional patterns. Ask yourself, when do I feel most reactive? What situations make me feel small, abandoned, or unworthy? What stories do these emotions tell about me? These questions are not meant to judge, but to understand. When you identify the origin of a reaction, its intensity often softens. Awareness brings choice. Self-compassion is essential here. You are not weak for having wounds. You are human. Every wound formed as a response to something you did not have the tools to process at the time. Now, as an adult, you can offer yourself what was missing: understanding, patience, and safety. Healing also involves allowing emotions to move through you without resistance. When sadness arises, let it be felt without turning it into self-criticism. When anger appears, listen to what boundary was crossed. Emotions are not enemies. They are messengers. Here are gentle practices to support healing. Write about emotional triggers to uncover patterns. Sit quietly with difficult emotions without distraction. Speak to yourself the way you would to someone you care about. Seek support when needed. Healing does not require isolation. As wounds heal, attachment loosens naturally. You stop gripping for reassurance because you are no longer trying to fill an old absence. You respond to the present instead of reliving the past. Detachment becomes less about effort and more about ease. Leading yourself means taking responsibility for your inner world, not to control it, but to care for it. When you heal, you free yourself from emotional reflexes that no longer serve you. You reclaim energy that was tied to old pain, and in that space, calm strength emerges. Chapter 10. One of the final and most profound acts of self-leadership is accepting what you cannot control. This sounds simple, but emotionally, it is one of the hardest lessons to live. Much of human suffering comes not from pain itself, but from resistance to reality. The mind argues with what is. It replays alternatives, demands explanations, and clings to how things should have been. Acceptance invites you to step out of that exhausting battle. Acceptance is often misunderstood as giving up, but acceptance is not resignation. It is clarity. It is the moment you stop wasting energy fighting facts and begin directing energy toward what is still within your power. You acknowledge reality without approving of it. You see things as they are, not as you wish they were. There are many things you cannot control: other people's choices, their emotions, their level of awareness, the past, unexpected changes, timing, and outcomes. When you try to control these, anxiety increases. Frustration grows. You feel tense even when nothing is actively wrong. Acceptance softens this tension. Think about how often your mind revisits situations you cannot change. Conversations that already happened. Decisions others made. Opportunities that passed. Each revisit drains emotional energy without offering resolution. Acceptance gently interrupts this loop. It says, "This happened. I am still here. What now?" When you accept reality, you regain access to choice. You can choose how to respond. You can choose what meaning to give an experience. You can choose how to move forward. Acceptance returns your agency. Here are practical ways to practice acceptance. Notice when you are mentally arguing with reality. Replace "this shouldn't be happening" with "this is happening." Focus on what you can influence right now. Allow emotions to arise without judging them. Acceptance also deepens detachment. You stop expecting life to meet emotional conditions before you allow yourself peace. You stop delaying calm until everything makes sense. You realize that peace is not found in control, but in alignment. Leading yourself when no one is watching means practicing acceptance in private moments. When disappointment arises, when plans fall apart, when recognition does not come. It means choosing not to harden or collapse, but to remain grounded. As you integrate everything you have learned, awareness, observation, boundaries, healing, detachment, you begin to live differently. You become less reactive and more intentional. You trust yourself. You carry less emotional weight. You act from values rather than fear. This is the quiet power of self-leadership. No applause, no validation, just inner alignment. As you move forward, reflect on this. How you lead yourself in unseen moments shapes the life you experience in visible ones. Choose awareness over autopilot. Choose calm over chaos. Choose integrity over approval. Detachment does not disconnect you from life. It connects you to yourself. Carry this wisdom gently. Practice it daily. Let your actions, especially the unseen ones, reflect the leader you are becoming. And remember, when you lead yourself well, life begins to follow.